All right, I'm Ed Parcaut. I'm the host of Helping the Brave, and let's bring in our guest today, David Wilson. How you doing, David?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today, sir?
As you can tell, the way I started, not the best. It's been one of those days.
Oh, I trust me. I know. I know, and I apologize for switching the time up on you.
Actually, it worked out well for me. I do work in between all this stuff that I do, all these podcasts, so it actually worked out for me.
No, I
All right,
still
not everybody's going to know you. So, David, what service were you in,
the Marine Corps.
and why did you pick the Marine Corps?
Actually, I didn't. My father did. My older brother, was already in the Marine Corps, and I suggested to my father I was going to do something, and he suggested that might ought to join my brother. And 5 days later, I was in Paris Island.
Wow, was your dad in the service?
No, he was law enforcement.
Okay. Well, Marine. I'm Navy, so I was a corpsman. So Marines are my people. So
no, I understand that. And corpsmen are part of us. So
that's right. Well, we're all part of the Department of Navy, but who's asking? All right. What'd you do when you were in the Marine Corps? Were you a grunt? What did you do?
I started out as a grunt. I was a scout swimmer, and then going back before your time, when General Dozier was kidnapped, I was put in charge of the flag officer security at Southern NATO in Italy.
And for people who don't know, what year was that?
That was in 82.
Okay. So it's not that far before my time. That I was in high school, but that's okay. But people, a lot of stuff that has happened in the 80s and 90s, people really don't remember. They only remember 9/11.
They do. And the 80s was a busy time.
I mean, there was a lot. We still had the Cold War, last I heard.
We did. And then
Reagan got shot at.
He did. Well, he got hit.
Well,
and then
Brady, the one who really got hit. So.
Correct. And so after General Dozier, Army General, got kidnapped, I was in charge of security for Admiral Crowell, who later became the Joint Chiefs of Staff down there. And he got me. I was getting out of the Marine Corps, and he got me in the counterintelligence. And from there, I never looked back. It was a great job. Got to travel to over 30 countries, operate in a lot of countries, did a lot of neat stuff. And so I continued doing that until 1998. I retired in 98.
Now, were you enlisted still at that time?
So I went from private to gunnery sergeant, E7, in 10 years. And then I picked up warrant officer. And then my last 10 years as a warrant officer.
Gotcha. Yeah. Everybody asked me if I was going to stay in because I had my bachelor's and master's, and I got it while I was in. And Navy, why do I want to be a line officer on a ship? That's the only negative thing about Navy. If you're not a physical therapist, doctor, or whatever, as an officer, you're on a ship, and that is where you live.
Yeah, I did 2 MAUs and 2 MEUs. While I was on. So for people who don't know what those are, Marine Amphibious Unit or Marine Expeditionary Unit, 6-month floats on ship.
Yeah.
So, I have no love of cruises anymore or the beach. I prefer the mountains myself.
Yeah. I like the beach, but San Diego, not really, So I got stationed at Camp Pendleton, and so I had the best of both worlds. I was at the hospital there, and I was on a Marine Corps base. So.
Okay. I've been to the hospital several times there at Camp Pendleton.
So counterintelligence, that's a unique situation for you to be in. I mean, that's totally different than because I read your bio and I was like, wow, that was different. It's a totally different world than just being in the military.
It is. And it's one of the little known MOSs, occupational specialties in the Marine Corps. You have to be an E5 over 5. I was an E5 over 4, and whenever I got into it, and back then we didn't have our own schools. We went to Army schools, so I went to the Army Officers Counterintelligence course as a staff sergeant because you have to do a year OJT to even get accepted into the field. And so from there, I mean, it is a completely different world. On that, you get to go to a lot of schools. And I don't want to sound like an advertisement, but it's a great job in the Marine Corps. It's a sought after job, and you get to travel a lot. There's a lot of independent duty. Like I did a year with almost a year with the French DPSD in France. That back whenever the Corsica was having a lot of problems with the ETA and different terrorist groups, bombings over there. Worked a lot in Israel, Egypt, all over the Middle East. And then in the 90s, it was Haiti and Somalia. And then, of course, I finished up, even after I retired, I spent 5 years in Afghanistan and 3 years in Iraq.
Wow. So you were everywhere. Pretty much.
Quite a bit, yes, sir.
Yeah. So, I know you keep calling me sir because you're a Marine. That's like standard operating procedures. I know, I get it. And I joke about in the past, if you ever watched any of our stuff, that when we were in physical therapy and we'd have a young lieutenant come in, Marine, he wanted us to call him sir so badly. He and we would never just call him by the rank, because that's how we deal with things. You know, in the Navy, it's still different, and it would irritate him. It's like, we're not your guys. We're, I understand the respect you want from your people, because that's important, because when you tell them to do something, you wanted them to do something.
Well, and respect is earned.
Right.
I mean, it really is. And I mean, I've worked a lot with the corpsmen and everything, and we always treated them the best way we could, because you never know when you're going to need one of them. That's right. On that. And when you need one, you really need one. I mean, there's no substitute.
Yeah, because I actually at Camp Pendleton went to the EMT and went and actually taught at the EMT school for a few years, and that was enjoyable because I was helping other corpsmen understand how, emergency medical, it was way before it is. Because now my son's in the Army, and he got in. To get as a medic, you have to pass your EMT. That's not how the Navy was back in the day.
Yeah, like I said, we always treated our corpsmen better than what we treated ourselves, because I mean, that's your lifeline right there. And I appreciate your son's service.
Thank you.
I mean, that's a job I couldn't do. Trust me.
As a medic?
I know. No, as a medic, there's no way.
Oh,
I mean, I've been to advanced medical schools, and not schools, training and everything, because of the stuff that we do, because we operated in 3-man teams in the Marine Corps in CI, 3-man teams plus an interpreter. And a lot of times you're out there on your own. But it's definitely not something that I could do day in and day out. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody has a job that they like, and thank goodness, because otherwise it would be a horrible world. So doing counterintelligence, that must have set you up for your future jobs when you retired to get out of the military, or not?
Well, and again, it's a unique position. I mean, I ran after I retired, and I'm going to preface this, and this is extremely difficult to do these days. I have a lot of college. I have much more military schools. After I retired, I ran all the counterintelligence ops there in northern Iraq. They call it a TIFCIC, but anyway, northern Iraq for 3 years. I have done a lot of stuff without a degree, and right now, I run one of the largest DoD programs that there is for security engineering, and I'm going to leave the name of the program out right now. But there's about 4,000 people on the program, and I have a team of 55 guys, and half of them, literally, 47% are former military. Because we need that balance between true engineers that have that, master's or PhD in physics or electrical engineering and things like that. And then I need the brains or the mindset that a military guy brings to it for OPSEC, operational security, SCRIM, the supply chain risk management part of it, and everything. So we have a good mix of young engineers and older. Whenever I say older, they're in their 30s and 40s. Several of them are retired military guys on there to kind of balance it out with life experiences and the training they received in the military. So there are good things to do out there. You just have to kind of search them out because they're not real well advertised. I mean, like right now, I have 3 openings that I'm searching the boards for certain people with certain skills, military guys.
What skills are you looking for?
Well, mostly counterintelligence type skills on that. And I mean, these are excellent jobs. There's a real need for guys with former military experience that have the maturity, the mental agility to handle stressful situations without melting down, and that a 25, 26-year-old's not going to bring to the table, and so. I mean, there's life after the military. There really is if guys are wanting it.
Yeah, but they gotta. It's harder. Maybe not harder. It's easier now than it was 20 years ago.
Yes.
When I got out, it was a totally different to find a job. You couldn't just Google a job. You couldn't go to LinkedIn and find all this stuff. It's a totally different world. You had to know somebody. And it's getting easier, but it's still difficult for people to find certain jobs that relate to what they did in the military.
Well, it is really about networking, getting out there, networking, getting into the associations and talking to people. Personally, I don't even look at LinkedIn. That's a great collection platform. But
no, I do because it's a lot of business stuff's on there connecting.
Understand.
Yeah.
And but if guys will hang in there and stick with it, and there's a lot of overseas jobs too, but there's also jobs inside the United States, because I know a lot of guys get out because they don't want to deploy anymore. But there are jobs here in the United States, and there's a huge market out there for cybersecurity right now. In fact, the military is competing with the civilian world, trying to hire away people from the civilian world right now with bonuses and everything else. I mean, the Marine Corps now, they've got a program where they're bringing guys in up to an E7 that have certain skills. They go to boot camp, they come out, they're an E6, E7 automatically.
Wow.
Just because they're on probation for a year, but they just announced this program last month. Don't know if it's going to work or not. We'll see.
And that's for cybersecurity?
That's for one of them is cybersecurity. Yes, sir.
Wow. So there are a lot of jobs out there. Well, I know we're having trouble getting people in the military, especially this last year. Army's numbers are down, Marine Corps numbers are down, Navy.
Everybody's numbers. Yeah.
My son got a $40,000 bonus to re-enlist.
Yeah, I never got a single bonus.
Yeah, I had to pay them to get my E4.
It didn't work that way back then.
No, it's totally different. And he actually waited. He was supposed to get his E5. Then he found out it was only a $10,000 reenlistment. He's like, I'm going to wait for my E5, please. Let me get my bonus, and then I'll do my E5. And now he's an actual E6 a year later. I mean, it's amazing how fast they're making rank in the Army.
Well, and I think that's across the board because a lot of the middle people are getting out. And I don't want to get into politics or anything, but it's not the same military whenever you and I were in.
Yeah, but that's what my grandparents said too.
That is true. That is true. I mean, times change, and the military is actually things that happen in the military, and then 5 years later, the civilian world follows it. I mean, they do a lot of social engineering and stuff in the military. That,
I mean, the whole DEI stuff that's going on right now needs to go away.
Couldn't agree more. And I've
just because it's supposed to be an army of one, of us, going one port, not an army of individuals.
Yeah, and again, things are different. I mean, whenever I retired, my out processing was anything wrong with you, and I'm like, no, I'm good to go. I got nothing, no disability, no nothing, and now I'm having to go back and fight it because of all the
Well, that's because
injury.
you said there was nothing wrong with you. That was your own fault.
Exactly, that was my own fault, but that was a mentality back then too.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
you
no,
didn't run.
I complained enough when I got out in 90. So, right before I missed the Iraq war by 2 days. And the fact that I was stationed with the Marines, I would have been called back.
Oh
And
yeah,
yeah, and I just complained because I worked in, I picked up patients, I did all this stuff, and so my medical record was huge. It was
mm,
thick because of all the injuries, and they're like, "Well, you complain enough. Here's 10%, shut and go away," which is nothing. But
yeah.
you still need to go back and have that looked at again. So
Oh, and I am. I mean, the whole reason I retired right after 20 was I had a jump accident. Had a jump accident. I did a jump accident in 1996 and messed up the left side of my body, severed my left Achilles tendon, and everything. And I basically got jerked off from jump billet and the billet I was in. And my last tour, I was the director of the Marine Corps Counterintelligence course at Nimitzi at Dam Neck, Virginia. And after that, I retired because I wasn't going to ride a desk because they weren't going to let me go back out and do the thing, even though I still can. And I immediately went to the civilian world and I was basically doing the same job as a civilian with the Defense Intelligence Agency. And then contracting got crazy in the early 2000s, and I jumped to the contracting world for the money and stayed. I've been there ever since.
so what you're doing right now, that's a contract?
I'm an employee of a large uh, defense contractor. Yes,
Okay. But I mean,
but
that's how everything's pretty much run anymore, isn't it? With a bunch of
pretty much, pretty much. I mean, it's. I mean, there's a lot of it has transferred over to the contracting world. Yes,
well,
but I mean, there's again, I encourage the guys that are looking at getting out and stuff. I mean, one, keep your security clearance. That's big money, and two, don't immediately jump out and start experimenting with stuff you shouldn't be or that you couldn't experiment within while you're in the military if you want to stay in that contracting world. But there's other things to do. I mean, like now, I write and I do a lot of different things to uh, occupy my time.
when you say you write, did you write any books?
I have 5 out there now. I produced my first one in 2019 at the insistence of my wife, and because I was in Afghanistan, I'd write the kids stories and everything, and she said, "Hey, you should write a book." And I played around with it and finally did, and it went to the top 100 on Amazon, and it's been there ever since. And everyone I've written has been in the top is still in the top 100.
Well,
Um, but I mean, something to do, and it's actually turned into pretty good money right now.
you should write a book on how to get in your industry.
Um, I've thought about that. There's a bunch of them out there, and
Even if it's a little ebook, and because you can sell ebooks on Amazon. So,
and there are tricks to it, not tricks to it, but there are means of getting into the contracting world, and a lot of it is persistence. I mean, going to these job fairs, talking to the big industrial companies, and getting on with them because the skills translate very well, and especially the leadership, uh, because the engineers and everything, they're coming out of college, they're getting a job. They're very smart guys, very smart, but they don't have a whole lot of life experiences and stuff. And there is a lot of program management, a lot of manager positions that translate very well over from the military.
yeah, I was talking to somebody who's doing stuff at the Pentagon, and he's trying to get it to where whatever we learn in the military translates directly over to whatever job we're trying to get into. It's like with myself when I was in physical therapy, mine didn't directly relate over. I had to, and as a corpsman, you could take the test as an LVN, but you can't do that anymore. Right. So they want it. You should be able to, whatever you learn in the military translates directly over. I know if you go to school, some of those are things they say, okay, you can get rid of this stuff and this stuff because you learned that in the military, but there needs to be a way to where, because I met a guy, I did in April, we did a firewalk for veterans, a 2-day event, had a couple different speakers. Then each night, 2 separate groups, 2 separate days would walk on coals, kind of like a Tony Robbins event. And one of the guys that was there, he had just got out. He's been out 6 months and he can't find a job, and he's an engineer.
Yeah, he needs to hit the big ones like the Honeywells and the Lockheed Martin and the Northrop Grumman's. I mean, they have openings all the time, and they don't advertise them well because there's so many people applying to these jobs. But I guarantee you, one, your resume's got to be written in language they understand, and that's not the way we write in the military. And you need to find someone that has been out there and that can translate those skills over to the corporate language. And I mean, I do that for guys all the time, and help them with their resumes and stuff. But it's you just got to stay with it, and you got to submit those resumes, and you got to do the interviews, and don't take the interviews lightly, because a lot of those guys that are doing the interviews, like I sit in probably 3 or 4 interviews a week, but I very rarely ever say anything because I'm just assessing the individual. And then afterwards, they're going to ask me, it's like, well, what do you think? And I'm going to be brutally honest with them. So, I mean, people need to take these interviews serious, and, by showing up late and everything else like I did, and I apologize today.
David, don't apologize. It's over. We moved on.
Yeah. I mean, you got to take them serious, but there are a lot of positions out there that they need to get on these boards, like the clearance boards and stuff like that have Clearance USA jobs and stuff, and get help. Reach out to a mentor that's been there and done that, and get them to help you write your resume.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. A lot of them don't have that connection. They're looking for people to connect, and that if there was a place for them to go to get those connections, this is you're in a industry that knows how to relate to the people in, like, the Marine Corps who's in counterintelligence or other places. There should be a way that I'm not saying you should go do it, but I'm just saying there's got to be a way that all these people, hey, I'm in this, where do I go to get to do this?
Yeah, there's I mean, I actually have a blog too, but it's called the Irritated Prepper. But if anybody wants to hit me up on that, or on Facebook, I'm under my own name.
So you're under David Wilson.
That's correct.
And you would be, I'm sure you're the only David Wilson out there.
And that is a problem. I wish I'd have picked a pen name because I've got such a common name. But then also my author's page on Amazon is David Wilson. It's Lone Star Odyssey is the series that I write, which is the only one out there, Lone Star Odyssey. Hit me up on that and say, hey, I need help, and I'll help you, point you in the right direction. If I can't help you myself, I will point you in the right direction. I won't leave you hanging on that. So any of the veterans, I mean, because if we don't help each other out, nobody else is. And I really appreciate what you do with your podcast. This is actually the first podcast I've ever done.
Really?
I typically don't do any advertising. I don't do any podcasts or anything like that. But I got on and started looking because some of my friends were like, hey, you need to go on podcasts. And I said, well, I'm only going to do veteran, type podcasts. And you were one of the first ones that popped up, and I reached out to you, and I mean, if we don't help each other, nobody else is. Yeah,
See, I'm sorry, Dave. I'm sorry, David. I was going to
no,
tell you, I've actually, for this podcast, Helping the Brave, only been on Podmatch for 4 months, if no, 3 months, if that. I did it by just word of mouth all before. And then it got to a point where I was running out of all the word of mouth. And I'm like, I was on there for my Inner Edison podcast, which is your greatest compliments come from your greatest defeats. And it has to do with business. And then myself personally, because of my book that came out 2 Februarys ago, Financial Freedom, Building Personal Wealth Through Home Ownership. I'm like, let me try Helping the Brave to see if I can connect with any veterans on here. And it was a lot of people in the first few weeks, which I did a ton of podcasting and having the, ready to go. And then but it's been nice to be able to find people who are looking to be on podcasts who's on, that are veterans. And up until just recently, hadn't had anybody hit me up who wasn't a veteran who was trying to get on to sell their product.
Oh yeah, and again, I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm
No,
just,
I'm not worried about you, David.
yeah,
This guy was just like, he has the word veteran in his thing, but he's not a veteran.
yeah. The for years, I was associated with Warrior 360. It was ran by a good friend of mine. He's a double amputee from Iraq, and 100% pass through. Everybody was volunteers that worked on the project. He did some really neat stuff for a lot of people. We looked up veterans that needed help, like cleaning their yard up or re-roofing their house, everything was 100% pass through because man, a lot of these places that have veterans in their name or whatever, they're flying corporate jets and they're doing, all these big shows. And I'm like, that, you're raising a lot of money that should be going to those veterans that need that, not necessarily for helicopter rides and shooting Gatling guns. I mean, that's to me, that doesn't do a whole lot for the veterans, as far as I'm concerned.
And I run into it in my industry a lot. The ones with the veteran in their name is not necessarily somebody you want to go through.
Yeah, there are some good ones out there.
I'm not saying there are not good ones, but I'm just saying,
but
we trust too much. We got to be careful.
We just got to be careful and be careful where you give your money to, because first thing I always ask is, what's your pass through? And by all means, if it's a nonprofit, take your expenses, operating expenses out of it. Fine, okay. But why are you doing this? Are you doing it to make a buck, or are you doing it to help the veterans? And if it's a nonprofit, as far as I'm concerned, it should be helping the veterans.
Well, that's what I ran into when I did the Firewalk under Operation Firewalk. We had a couple people who sponsored, and next thing I know, I see videos with them talking about their company and how they were there at the event, and behind, and it didn't talk anything about my Rotary who put it on and paid for everything.
Yeah.
And that's, you have to, and so I'm telling everybody, if you're going to put an event on, whoever's going to be part of it, get in writing what they can and can't do.
Oh, exactly. I mean, it's a hard world out there right now, and I appreciate people that like yourself that are reaching out and helping the veterans and stuff on that. But speaking of firewalking, one of the original firewalkers, one of my mentors, they did experiments like that with the agency. I'm sure you saw the movie Men Who Stare at Goats or heard of it. He was one of the original guys that was involved with stuff like that. Great guy, and those type of events really do help pull people out, and help them get back on the right track, because it's a rough world out there right now. Mm-hmm. It is, and there's a lot of people struggling, and everything's expensive. I mean, now money doesn't go as far as it did. Used to, and trust me, I have 12-year-old triplets, and they're into every sport that there is, and it's expensive.
Yeah, it's nobody knew what inflation was at the last election.
No.
because I hadn't been here in 42 years. So you had to be 50 and older to even be
Mhm.
somewhat know what it was, really 55 and older, to really understand it. And now it's here and it's really hurting everybody. And it's even though it's slowing down, it's not going to get rid of what we just went up through. So the 55% and stuff that went up that cost, it's not going to go down. It's going to
No,
stay there.
no, it might slow down going
Yeah.
up, but it's not going to go back down. It's just not.
That's why as a veteran, you need to use your VA loan to buy a house so you're protected against inflation.
Oh, absolutely. And property is always a wise investment. And I mean, interest rates are horrible right now. Hopefully
Okay.
they will
They're
come
not,
back down.
David, they're not horrible. Horrible was in 80s when they were 21%. All right. That
True,
was
true.
horrible.
Yeah,
I've seen clips where people were like, 15% would have been good. We should have done there. I know it's 17 right now.
yeah,
it's and
yeah. It's not that bad.
Yeah, it's bad because the affordability is worse right now because of the inflation and everything else and what we can afford. But we're at 7% or 6% for for VA FHA. That's not a bad rate. That's an average
No,
rate. We went through a pandemic where we all thought we were going to die. They closed down the country, and next thing you know, we have rates below 3%. They're in the twos, and everybody got those rates and loved those rates, and they're never going to leave their house now. And that's what set us all up. That pandemic ruined everything.
well, and that's a problem that veterans are facing right now that bought around a military base. Well, a lot of times you have to go to the work if you're, for a job. And a lot of those jobs are not around a military base. They're around DC or big metropolitan areas. And well, they're sitting in a house, or they're sitting on a house that's very low interest rate, and then they're looking at, if I move and sell, then I'm going to have to buy something at 7%, and it scares them.
Yeah.
It does scare them, and I mean, there are ways that they can do that. There's, I mean, rental property is one way to go. It's a pain in the butt, but pardon the language, but
Not if you get a good property management company,
right,
and you
and
can
that's where I
and you
was
can.
going to go.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, I do mortgages. I do for vets. That's all I do pretty much. I've been doing it for 25 years, and there's so many. So what I tell people is rent the place, use the extra rent you get to offset the difference in your payment going forward.
yeah.
Because eventually we will go down in rates. We're not going to see the
Mhm.
2% or the 3%. We might see 4%, 4.5 to 5 in the next
Yeah.
few years, but it's not going to happen overnight.
Well, and I'd be a hypocrite to say don't do rental property. I mean, we have several rental properties. My wife is very good with money, and so yeah, we have a good property manager, and but yeah, I mean, real estate's a good way to go. I mean, it's a good place to put your money at. People
Well, with
always
the
seem to
VA
place.
rate, I mean, VA, no money down. And I mean,
Yeah,
that program is the best now with the Blue Water Act that came out a couple years ago. And I mean, really, you can go up to 2.5 million anywhere, but not that you want to do a VA loan on that high.
mm,
But if you have a home now, you can still buy another one VA. So,
absolutely, you can, and a lot of people don't realize that.
yeah.
A lot, I mean, the VA is not real good about advertising the benefits.
I don't think they really want to advertise the fact that you can get a second
No,
home.
yeah, and it's crazy that they don't, because just because you want to buy a second house, or hang on to the one you've got and move somewhere else and buy another one. I mean, uh, that's just part of it, and yeah, you need to take advantage of that. The veterans out there, they need to take advantage of it. They need to go and and do the things that these companies. I mean, they provide you a lot of benefits too if you're military. So. I mean, you get a lot of discounts and everything else if you're military. So
Mhm.
you need to do some homework. People aren't just going to walk up and hand you stuff, and you need to be persistent. You need to do your own research and hang in there, because it can be done.
Wow. And when you said the VA doesn't give, they don't, talk about these different benefits. They barely talk about any benefits. Even, I mean, I'm so
Yeah.
negative VA at this, and I want it all gone and just get an insurance that covers at 120%, so it can be taken anywhere like it was supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, it is a constant battle with the VA for anything,
And it
almost,
shouldn't be
and
that way.
it shouldn't be that way. And there are some good people that work for the VA and
Mhm.
everything, but you got to find one that'll actually tell you, hey, you rate this, 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 and this is how you go about getting it. And they try to kill you with paperwork, and you just got to fight through that and get the. There's people out there that will help you with the paperwork.
Mhm.
There's organizations out there that help you, and I'm not going to get off on my pet peeve of the law firms that'll get your VA settled for, and then take a big cut of it.
You take a big part of your first check.
Yeah. I mean, there are organizations out there that will help you, your VFWs, and
DAVs.
stuff like that. Yes. I mean, go in there and join the VFW, and they will help you. And again, it's for like $45 a year. And they do a lot of things for the veterans. There's a lot of events and everything else. But become active in your local VFW or your local associations. There's a Marine Corps Association. There's a lot of them. I'm sure the Navy's got them. I'm not for sure what those are, but get out there and get active in them. And there's people out there that will help you.
I had a lady on 2 podcasts ago that dropped, and she was 30 years with the VA system, and she will help you work through systems. So
Yeah, I mean, because and there are some real benefits to it if you can get through the paperwork and get through all the rigmarole and everything. So reach out to people, talk to people. Don't close down and just think that you're the only one out there that are having problems with this paperwork and everything, because everybody does.
Yep.
Everybody does. I mean, my wife is on me constantly. She's like, "Well, have you done this? Have you done this?" And I'm like, "I'm going to get to it."
Yes, dear.
Exactly. So, but there are people out there that are smart with the system. You just got to find them.
Yep. David, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Appreciate having you here.
No, my pleasure, and it was an honor to be on your show. And again, I want to thank you for everything you're doing for the veterans.
Well, thank you. Just trying to do my part. When I first got out, I ran away, and then I came back to start doing some work.
Well,
And then we are actually having Operation Firewalk again in May of 25, May 3rd of 2025.
Where's that taking place at?
Modesto, California.
Oh, Modesto. Okay.
You know where Modesto is?
It's real close to Oakdale.
Yes, it is. How do you know Oakdale?
Whenever I was very young, I went to kindergarten in Oakdale. My father was out on the West Coast for a short period of time before moving back to the Midwest. But I remember it very distinctly.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good place because we have it set up now. We know exactly what we're doing. Other places we're trying to put these on and we're trying to help them, but it's very difficult with local government and putting these on. It's really ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's all about the coals, the smoke, which is ridiculous.
Just ridiculous on that.
Yeah.
Well, good luck.
All right. Well, thank you. We're good because we're in the so I moved to, so one of the things I tell everybody, get out of the city, find the line for the county, and get over the line on the county side. The county doesn't care as much as the city.
Yeah, some of the city governments are crazy these days.
Yeah. I have an email from a guy who was like, "Oh, I said you guys would never ever be able to have this here. I'm not going to set a precedence." I'm like, setting a precedence of helping veterans and as somebody who has 22 years experience working for Tony Robbins. That's a precedence you could set because then nobody's going to meet it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, keep it up. I mean, there's a lot of people benefit from what you're doing, and there's people out there that need it.
Yes, they do. David, again, thank you so much for being here. And again, if people want to reach out to you, it's David Wilson. You find him on Facebook. And you also said, what was the other place to find you?
I've got a blog called The Irritated Prepper, and then my author's page on Amazon under my book titles.
Okay. Again, thanks so much for being here, David, and we really appreciate you being here.
My pleasure.
Thank
Good
you.
meeting